Ironically, the first step and often the hardest step is to fully accept the situation you're in, right? So whether I was just talking to a client today and he is going through a lot of debt. And I said, look, for you to actually become wealthy and turn around your relationship with money, have you really sat with yourself and accepted this is where I am? Because a lot of people, they're striving to be somewhere else so they don't have to look at where they're at. So when something quote unquote bad happens, and that is, I say quote unquote because from a cosmic perspective, sometimes the most painful events can be the most transformational. And I'm sure everyone listening to this can recall a moment in their life where in the moment it was very painful, whether it was a breakup, a financial scarcity situation, a health issue. But from that moment, it sparked a change in you, in your consciousness. And you were never the same. And you became stronger. You became more resilient. And 10 years later, you might look back at that moment and say, thank God that happened because it got me out of that country, that city, that job, that situation. If that had not happened, that bad thing, I might have been stuck on that path for 10 more years. But because the universe nudged me out of it through a series of circumstances, Neville calls it the bridge of incidents.
Yeah.
Through a series of incidents, you get nudged into a different direction. And you either go kicking and screaming or you say, okay, this is happening. Let me surrender to it. Let me understand what is the universe trying to tell me here. So if someone's going through a tough situation this year, first accept it and then get curious about why is this showing up in your life? Because there's probably a couple of clues that the universe is trying to get you to notice. You know, whether it's in a relationship, in a job, in a financial situation, the universe is always trying to teach you something. So don't go through a hard time without learning the lesson. Otherwise, you'll have to repeat it. And no one likes that.
Welcome, everyone, to another Design Ops Aligned podcast. Now, we are going down a different route today than our normal, usual guests. And I am welcomed by a very special guest to me. He means a lot to me, and I'm glad that he's come onto the show. And in this show, he's going to explain to you a lot about what he does and what he stands for and why this resonates with me. And I'll give you my 2 cents into this, why I brought James onto the show. So welcome, James.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
James, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am deeply into consciousness, manifestation, psychedelics, and how we can use all of the tools available to us to upgrade our mind. And I run 2 podcasts, the Xander Trip, that's mostly about psychedelics and spirituality, and also the Manifest with Neville Goddard podcast, which is, I think, how you found me. And that one is all about the works of Neville Goddard, who was a mystic in the 1900s, who talked a lot about the power of imagination, the power of mind, how thoughts create reality. And his language, the way he spoke, is so precise, as you know, and so resonant. And there's some resonance and frequency that I feel when I read his work. So I run a course called Unlock God Mode, which combines the teachings of Neville, some of my other favorite teachers, my own life experiences, and basically a program that takes people on a 30-day journey that transforms their consciousness and helps them see life in a different perspective.
I'm going to be very honest with the audience today. So I came across James because I was going through a very hard time in my life, and so I think I'm not very open on social media, but I guess I'll open it in this podcast. So I was going through a divorce at that time, and it was a very, very hard moment of my life. I have 2 kids. 2 kids with my ex-wife. I have 3 kids with my current wife. So it was a very, very hard time for myself. I started to look into manifestation, or somebody had said to me, look into manifestation. And that's how I came across James. And I started to listen to his podcast. And from the get-go, he really touched something inside of me, which then ended up where we are today, where Design Ops Aligned is now a company which is thriving. We have a very good podcast, and it all come down to James. If I'll be honest with you, James, that's why I'm so starstruck that you're here today. Everything has come down from his teachings and his podcast that has really enlightened me to where I am today. And another reason why I brought him onto the show is that this year is going to be a very, very hard year in the design field. And a lot of people are looking to be laid off, or the industry is going to do a massive layoff, which has already happened in America, and it's slowly coming over to Europe. And I wanted to bring James onto the show because I think his teachings and what he believes in will help a lot of people go through this bad time as I was going through, many, many years ago. Now, James, when people are going through hard times, and you mentioned this a lot on your podcast, like if you're going for a bad relationship, or if you're stuck somewhere, what is your teachings and your knowledge of what you know from Neville Goddard and other people? What would you say can help people get out of that rut from your perspective?
Ironically, the first step, and often the hardest step, is to fully accept the situation you're in, right? So whether I was just talking to a client today and he is going through a lot of debt, and I said, look, for you to actually become wealthy and turn around your relationship with money, have you really sat with yourself and accepted this is where I am? Because a lot of people, they're striving to be somewhere else so they don't have to look at where they're at. So when something quote unquote bad happens, and that is, I say quote unquote because from a cosmic perspective, sometimes the most painful events can be the most transformational. And I'm sure everyone listening to this can recall a moment in their life where in the moment it was very painful, whether it was a breakup, a financial scarcity situation, a health issue. But from that moment, it sparked a change in you, in your consciousness. And you were never the same. And you became stronger. You became more resilient. And 10 years later, you might look back at that moment and say, thank God that happened, because it got me out of that country, that city, that job, that situation. If that had not happened, that bad thing, I might have been stuck on that path for 10 more years. But because the universe nudged me out of it through a series of circumstances, Neville calls it the bridge of incidents.
Yeah.
Through a series of incidents, you get nudged into a different direction. And you either go kicking and screaming, or you say, okay, this is happening. Let me surrender to it. Let me understand, what is the universe trying to tell me here? So if someone's going through a tough situation this year, first accept it, and then get curious about, why is this showing up in your life? Because there's probably a couple of clues that the universe is trying to get you to notice. Whether it's in a relationship, in a job, in a financial situation, the universe is always trying to teach you something. So don't go through a hard time without learning the lesson. Otherwise, you'll have to repeat it. And no one likes that.
It's a hard one, James, because, when you're in that situation, most people look at it as it's happening to me rather than for me. Now, they feel like, I'm in debt, or I'm going through this divorce, or I'm in this bad relation. The universe is against me at the moment. But how do you get people to start thinking that it is actually happening for you? Now, I'll give you an example. It's like, debt is the worst one. It's constantly on your mind, and you're at a risk of losing your house, not putting food on the table, not feeding your kids. How can you get someone to move away from that mentality of things? They feel like things are happening to them rather than happening for them.
Yeah, it's a tough one in the moment. I'm not gonna lie. When you're going through something tough, there's no way around it. It's painful. It sucks. But you must take responsibility. Brian Tracy, in one of my favorite books from him, I think it was called Goals by Brian Tracy, and he says in the very first chapter, the moment you become an adult is the moment you take full responsibility for your life. You never blame your parents again. You never blame how you grew up or what's happening. So that's why I say acceptance is the first key, because it's taking responsibility. It's saying, maybe it looks like something else caused me to be this way or caused me to end up in this debt or this situation. But from this day onwards, I'm going to take responsibility because no one is coming to save me. I have to save myself. And the responsibility actually gives you more power in the moment. Even if you're in a very tough situation, the moment you claim responsibility, you get this surge of energy. You're like, okay, since no one is coming to save me and I'm have to do all the work, let me look for solutions. And it's that flip from looking at the problem to looking for solutions. It can be the exact same situation, same negative balance, two different people. One person is going to look at it and feel dejected and feel like despair. The other person will look at it and say, okay, this sucks. What's next? What is the next step? How can I move forward from this? And the gap between that is consciousness. And that's why I'm obsessed with working on my consciousness. Is if you are in a scarcity consciousness, you will only see the problems.
Yes.
You will only see the complaints. You will only see the darkness of the world. And when you're in a consciousness that invites solutions, opportunities, creativity, maybe not overnight, but definitely over 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, your life literally starts to change as you start to see things differently. The things you see become different.
James, so you just mentioned just a second ago, it can happen over a certain period of time. Now, when I have spoken to people who have tried to do manifestation, one thing I come across, and this is just my 2 cents, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I've come across people who didn't have the patience for it because they were expecting results like tomorrow or next week. And then they kind of fall off the bandwagon and say, okay, this stuff doesn't really work for me. What would you say to people who kind of, who are going to listen to this podcast and try it and not see the results straight away?
You have to have the discipline of mind to stick with your vision no matter what. The greatest leaders, the greatest directors, authors, if you think of anyone that you admire, it's because they had a vision. They wanted to create something and they went after it. J.K. Rowling, for example, I think she was on welfare when she had the idea for Harry Potter, and she just continued with her vision. She didn't let anything stop her. Steve Jobs, with the iPhone and building Apple. I could go on with examples, but the point is the vision is a must. And a great metaphor that people can use is when you change the temperature in your house, right? Let's say it's freezing. You come home, you turn up the temperature. The house is still cold. It doesn't change right away. You have to keep the temperature there and leave it. And over the next hour, 2, 3 hours, it changes. Reality is kind of the same way. When you set your wealth frequency to a new set point, it is working. But in the beginning, it's working so slow that the room still feels cold. And it's imperative that you don't switch the temperature off and back on and back off, because that's just taking you nowhere. You're going back and forth between scarcity vibe, abundance vibe, scarcity vibe, abundance vibe. One tip I tell to everyone is look at your life and look at where you experienced the greatest success, whether it's success in your business, in your friendships, in your relationships, in your health, and notice how things, when you made the decision to change, at first, there was no sign of progress. Let's say you were working on your fitness. Externally, nothing is really changing that much in the first few weeks. And then eventually you look in the mirror and you're like, holy shit, it's changing. But all through that time, you have to keep doing the workouts and you have to keep showing up. And it's the same thing with your mind. When you decide to change your mind, you decide I'm done with the chapter 1 of my story and I'm ready to jump into chapter 2. Whether it's you're trying to attract more wealth, more love, more health, you make that decision and you also make the decision to commit to it for the next 3 months, the next 6 months. I did this in 2024. 2024, I made it my year of abundance. and I committed to working on my wealth frequency for the entire year. So no matter what happened in the year, no matter what chaos, problems, drama, I kept that golden thread of I'm going to study books about money. I'm going to talk to mentors about money. I'm going to focus on business above all else. And guess what? First few months, not much was changing.
Hmm.
Suddenly, you start to see the exponential curve and it starts to go up. And November and December were my best months financially ever. So it just goes to show, like, when you make a commitment and you stick to it, it does start to change things.
I'm going to dissect that bit about chapter 1, chapter 2, because that's a very, very important bit. Let me take 2 steps back. There are going to be people who are very reluctant to jump on the bandwagon with this. You know, they will come with the mindset, and I came with the mindset. I'll be honest with you. I came with the mindset of this is just mumbo jumbo. You know, what is this really? Now, what would you say to people to get them over that first initial curve about, you know, the power of manifestation? And I'll give you my 2 cents in here. Like, as I have studied it more and more and more, I have learned that there's so much power inside of your imagination. Now, what would you say to people that are very skeptic about this? What would you what's your 2 cents?
Yeah, well, the skepticism creates more skepticism. So it's kind of a catch-22. When you close off your mind to the possibilities of miracles and things happening in a really synchronistic way, then you get to live in an objective muggle world. When you
Mm-hmm.
accept that there could be a little bit of magic and wizardry happening, then you get to live in the wizard world. But what I would say to someone skeptical, you are manifesting all the time. You might not call it manifestation. Let's call it creation. Let's call it your brain pattern matching things because it's thinking about a certain thing in a certain way. Let's call it the reticular activating system. There's a way to look at it scientifically as well. But you're manifesting all the time. Have you ever had a situation where you meet someone and you make a judgment about them and it colors in who you think they are? And then you get to know them a little bit deeper. And suddenly you realize, oh my God, my judgment was completely wrong. Like, this person is amazing. And I don't know so it just goes to show the power of the mind. When you color in someone with a certain frequency, you actually perceive only that behavior in them. Let's say you meet someone, you think they're arrogant, you're going to see all the arrogant qualities in them until you change your mind about them and you get to know them deeper. And suddenly you realize, oh, there's a really kind soul there. Uh, Nothing about that person changed. You changed your mind about
Yeah.
them, and now you get to experience a whole new version of them. Think about it also this way. When you go home for Christmas and you go visit your parents, the version you are with them is totally different than the version you are with your closest friend. It
Yeah.
just, without even trying to, their expectation of who you are, you begin to show up that way for them in a way that you don't show up for other people. It's amazing how Neville calls it the law of assumption. What we assume, we become. What others assume, they see in us. But worry about your own hologram. Let's not worry about other people's holograms, because everyone is creating and they're all creating their own destiny. But our job is to be responsible for our energy, our frequency, not meddle in someone else's frequency. And then we get to attract the people, the opportunities, the ideas. This is something people miss. You can manifest ideas. People sometimes think manifestation has to be physical or financial in nature. But what you're really seeking is better ideas. One idea could change your financial future forever. One good business idea, one idea about relationships could change your love life, the way you see people, the way you approach them, the way you interact with them. So really, we're looking at a change of mindset, a change of mind, not so much a change of physical pattern. The physical will follow. It always follows.
James, a lot of people that do jump into this manifestation world, you know, I've always seen it in 2 sides. I've always seen people who, again, just want to manifest something that's physical material. Wealth being one of them, bigger house, bigger car. It's always that kind of material. And the second one is always trying to manifest something in another person or something to happen to somebody else. Bad relationship, they always probably want some form of retribution or something like that, or something bad to happen to somebody. Now, what would you say to those people that are listening to this podcast that want to manifest those two types of things?
So the first one was wealth?
Well, physical stuff, like physical
Yes.
Things or materialistical things. And the second one being that they want something to happen to another person. Maybe it could be them falling in love with them or something bad.
Yeah.
No, and that's my perception. I've always seen when I've spoken to people in that manifesting community, it's always around those two things.
It's interesting, yeah. It's very rooted in the 3D, which is understandable. People want the money, the car, the house, but what they're really seeking is the abundance frequency, the feeling of being free, waking up in the morning and feeling energized, feeling free, feeling expansive, like their soul is expanding and growing. That's what people really want. But we're so trained by advertisement and by movies and by society. So the symbol of the mansion or the symbol of the Ferrari or the symbol of the Rolex, it conveys that to us in a very surface way. So my thinking is, look, if you want material things, go after it. There's no shame after it. You're in a physical world. You incarnated as a physical human being. Go enjoy the physical things. But as you manifest the physical things, just remember that you might get everything you want physically if you just start with the mental. Manifest better cognition, better ideas, better creativity. Manifest charisma. Manifest a life force energy flowing through you all day, every day. Manifest inspiration. Like those are the intangibles that actually make life so sweet. Regarding the specific person, I have to say I'm not a fan of that because it involves meddling in other people's business. And I just don't think we are meant to meddle in other people's free will. So if someone has a relationship or a lover and they want to affect that person or have them do something specific, you're giving your power away to this external thing, which is actually similar to the material thing. You're giving away your power to the external money, the external house, the external car. So one thing I teach my students is you must reclaim your power. You can't be siphoning it off into external things. And wanting someone else to behave differently is the ultimate externalizing of power. You're saying, I am powerless unless this person does what I need them to do, and then I'm happy. That's very weak if you really think about it. A much stronger position is, I am in my power and I am fulfilled with my life no matter what anyone else does. I find my fulfillment in myself, in my life, in my personal life. I don't need anyone else to be different. I'm not chasing anyone. I'm not trying to get anything. I just am this frequency, and everything that belongs to me, that is divinely mine, gets attracted to me. That's a much, much more secure position to manifest from.
It's a hard one, though, because, Neville's teaching, and also your teaching, is always to put your mindset in the end, that the wish is fulfilled. That
go to the end state, yes.
Go to the end state, that you already have the house, that you are living in the house, you are driving the car. It's so hard. Even myself, who practice it every day, morning, afternoon, evening, it's very hard to position yourself in that end state when you are in, again, that bad situation, or you're in that, not, I would say, not abundance, but not, how should I say, let me put it in a better way, that need of having it, because everyone is in that state of, I want it now. what advice would you give to people to be in that end state that you have everything to then see the manifestation take place?
Yeah, so Neville, I love Neville because he summarizes it in a couple words. He says, feeling is the secret, right?
Yep.
It's all about the
Yeah.
feeling. If you can't feel that state, you don't get to vibrationally go there or physically go there. So, what I would say to someone about the end state, it's a practice. There's some daily rituals you can do. For example, 20 minutes every day of imagining what do you want the end of this year to look like? Right now, we're in January 2025. So go to December 2025. Close your eyes, go into a mini meditation. Imagine I'm in December 2025. I'm looking back at my entire year. And how do I want to feel about this year? What would make me deliciously happy that this happened this year? And as you start talking about it in your mind or envision it, you start feeling the feelings like, wow, if my podcast did this amount of downloads, I would feel so good. Or if this
Yeah.
happened, I would feel so good. Or sometimes you realize, I just want my kids to be happy. Or, I just want my health. Sometimes you realize you don't need any of that external stuff and you just want the pure basics. Love in your life, happy kids, happy family, and good health. So sometimes it's a matter of really understanding, what do I really want? Not what do I think I want is shiny or shiny, it's alluring, but what is the depth that I'm seeking? Yeah, I hope that's helpful. In terms of like the end state. Oh yes, one thing I wanted to say was, look at the gap between where you are now and where you want to go, and be honest with yourself. So let's say someone wants to start a business online, but they've not earned a single dollar online ever. Make that your first milestone. Like, hey, universe, wouldn't it be fun if I just want to earn $1 online through something fun, like selling an ebook on Gumroad or making $1 off of AdSense, like just something fun, no pressure. Okay, you make your $1. Next milestone, I want to make $100 online. Next milestone, let's get to $1,000 online. And before you know it, you are running an actually successful business online. But when someone is at zero and they say, by next month, I want to be a millionaire, while that can happen for some people that are very ready for that frequency, it's such a big gap for most people that it kind of bounces them back to despair. It's like
Yeah.
trying to be a bodybuilder when you have not gone to the gym. It's like you need
Yes.
that foundation first before you go towards that goal. So I like to think in milestones. I mean, always think big. Like, have the biggest vision you can for the end state, but in the middle of it, have some milestones, because that keeps, at least for me personally, it keeps me motivated. It makes it very realistic, very doable, very easy to know what the next step is.
Brilliant. Such a brilliant answer. Do you want to hear a secret from me?
Sure.
I actually manifested this podcast in my head. I actually was listening to you. I was like round about October. I remember this, and I was listening to your podcast, and I was like, I had it in my head. I want to get James on the show, and I manifested it in my head. Me and you talking right now, and it's literally happening right now, because I said, like, we already spoken offline about my starstruck about James. But I had it. I really, really had it in my head. I wanted to get James on the show, and he's here today. And it's just a proof that when you want something, not like want something, but when you have it in your mind and you have the end goal and you already imagined it, it does come true. And there's many. This is just one example that's happened on my life since I've been listening to you, James. A lot of the stuff that I've manifested, I would say, near enough, most of them have come true.
Wow.
Especially from your teachings and listening to Neville. And again, it takes faith, it takes trust. You have to trust it. It takes patience as well. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember this October, I was thinking about it, and we're now in January. So it didn't happen like, in 2 weeks. It happened over a certain amount of time, and we're here today. So
exactly. And that's basically 3 months, right? And
Yeah.
I notice 3 months is sort of this magic number where first month, nothing really happens. Second month, you're starting to see like some synchronicities. Third month, things are like full blown manifesting. And by the end of the
Yeah.
3 months, you can make a huge difference that you can't make in 1 month, at least for most people. But in 3 months, you have that arc, you have that storyline that
Hmm.
feels so natural. Neville talks about this. The way things manifest will seem so natural as if it would have happened anyway. So it's
Yes.
very easy to dismiss it and say, well, of course it happened. But no, you did the work. You planted seeds in month 1 that took time, that sprouted in month 3, month 4, month 5. I I'm sure you've had this experience too. You write down an intention in your notebook
Yes.
and you
Yeah.
forget about it. And then
Yeah.
a few months later, you're digging out your notebooks and you're going through them and you're like, oh my God, I wrote this and it came true.
Yeah.
Like I did this, I remember in early last year, there was one person that I wanted to connect with deeper. And I wrote down just randomly in my journal, I was like, universe, I want a closer relationship with this person. And then like 3 months, 4 months later, I look back and I'm like, holy shit, it happened. But it happened in such a natural way, in
Yeah.
ways I could not have, the right opportunity to see this person, to meet up with them. We were not living in the same country. Like just things happened that brought us together. And it was exactly what I wanted to manifest. So the power
Brilliant.
of words and the power of the written word. If someone
Hmm.
wants a pro tip, start writing down your intentions in a notebook and do it in present tense. So I am so grateful now that I am earning this much a month. I am so grateful now that I'm healthy. I am so grateful now that I've met the love of my life. So you do it in a present or past tense. If you say, I want to meet the love of my life, that energy is very future focused. You're pushing it out into the future. You want to bring it here, present moment, right here, right now.
James, you know why I tend to do as well is the Nikola Tesla 369 method, where I have 3 sentences, which I read over 6 times a day, and 9 seconds for every single sentence. So it's like, I am something, or, you know, I vision this, or something. You know, those 3 sentences change every time it comes true. And I do that every time I've done it, it has come to fruition. Now, what's your knowledge about this 369 method?
It's very brief. I heard about it from a friend, and the way he described it was slightly different. So he said every day he writes 3 times in the morning, and
Yeah.
then he writes 6 times in the afternoon and 9 times in the evening. And I asked him, do you keep the affirmation the same? And he said, no, you can even change it day to day, which I thought was really interesting because most people would say keep it the same. And he talked about how his friend had done it and had manifested the house he wanted, the
Hmm.
career he wanted. So I've been trying it out a little bit, and I've already been seeing some really promising results. Um, it's it's amazing, and you know what I think is most interesting about it is the people that stop the practice and that are
Hmm.
not able to consistently write the same affirmation every day. It means something about their frequency is not allowing that, right? Whereas the people that stick with it and are able to do it day after day, and they're calling it in and calling it in, it means they're energetically very ready to receive that. So very important to pay attention to that. Like I know a lot of young people, they want fame or they want to be a billionaire or something. But the thing is, if you start writing, I am a billionaire, without fully considering how that might affect your relationships, your life, the way people perceive you, and if you are not energetically able to hold that frequency, you will find out that you'll drop the practice after a few days. After a few days, you will not be able to write the affirmation. So
Hmm.
choose an affirmation that resonates with your soul. Choose something that you know 100% you're able to receive it all, roses and thorns. Because every desire every manifestation comes with its own thorns, with its own
Yes.
set of consequences. You want to be rich? Okay. Are you ready to pay higher taxes? Are you ready to manage your finances responsibly? Are you ready to hire a tax accountant that can deal with those sort of numbers? So, if you are, perfect. But if you're resisting any part of the manifestation, that's where the blocks come in. Same thing with love. You want love, but part of you actually likes solitude. You want love, but part of you loves the freedom of being single. Well, those are two opposing forces. So
Yeah.
I would say to anyone trying the 369 method or any sort of affirmation method, choose a phrase that you know you can stand behind 100%. Universe, I know I want this, and I want it with every fiber of my being, and I'm ready to receive it with all of its consequences.
Love that one. That's a brilliant answer. James, I haven't delved into it. I mean, how did you get into this? And, how long have you been doing this? Because I don't know your history of how long the podcast has been there and how long you've had your YouTube channel and stuff like that. How did you get into all of this?
So the podcast has only been around 2 years now, 2 years, 2.5 years. And the way I got into manifestation specifically is very interesting. When I was around 13 or 14 years old, some random kid from my school who I didn't even know, we were waiting for the bus and he asked me a question and he said, "Do you know that your thoughts create reality?" First of all, what kind of kid asks another kid that question? That's mind-blowing to me. And I'm like, "No, I don't know." And then he's like, "Go to the library and pick up Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks." And being open-minded, I went to the library and picked up Ask and It Is Given. And on the first page of that book, there's an intro by Wayne Dyer. And Wayne Dyer says, "This book will change your life." And being the impressionable young kid, I'm like, yes, this book will change my life. And so I get into Abraham Hicks, and that was the gateway. That was the beginning of understanding that thoughts create things. And from Abraham Hicks, I then discovered Wallace Wattles, who wrote The Science of Getting Rich, amazing book. I discovered James Allen, who wrote As a Man Thinketh, and probably Rhonda Byrne and a bunch of other authors. I went through the whole self-help section eventually. But that first introduction was by Abraham Hicks, and the way it came into my life was such divine synchronicity. I mean, it almost felt like the universe just dropped this piece of knowledge into my lap. And I wonder if that happens for everyone, where just at the right moment, you are given a clue, you're given a piece of information. Now it's up to you. You have free will. It's up to you if you want to pursue that clue and discover what goes down the rabbit hole and what's down there and what's behind the veil. But I think everyone gets clues in their lifetime. The same thing with psychedelics. So I run a YouTube about psychedelics. One of the reasons I'm so interested in psychedelics is they show me more of the true nature of reality. And all of my life, I had a deep desire to see something extraordinary. Like, universe, show me a UFO, or universe, give me an astral projection out of body experience. I wanna prove to myself that there's life beyond death. I want to prove to myself that there's something mystical going on. And nothing was happening for most of my life. And then at the right moment, when I was ready to receive it, mushrooms came into my life and DMT came into my life. And it showed me with concrete proof, at least for me, it was concrete proof, that there is this whole other energetic frequency universe going on at the same time. And the way that ties into manifestation is when you see first person that reality is made of frequency while you're tripping on mushrooms, it makes it really easy to then take these books from Neville and from Rhonda Byrne and Abraham Hicks with much more seriousness, because you've seen what they're talking about. You're not just going by faith alone. You've actually seen it. And that for me was an amazing synchronicity that the universe brought me both to manifestation and psychedelics at different points in my life.
Would you say that the whole thing does come down to frequency? So as we mentioned
Yes.
earlier in the podcast, you know, people are in that state because of a certain frequency. And to get out of the state, they have to change their frequency.
Hmm.
So somebody who's probably watching this podcast, and I'm hoping they've got to the 43rd minute right now where we're speaking and have gone past the whole, skepticism section. What would you say to people that want to change the frequency, and how can they go about changing their frequency?
Very good question. Here's the thing about frequency. Everyone thinks that their frequency is the default normal. Like the way you are being right now, it just feels natural to you.
Yeah.
So one of the first steps is to realize to become more aware of other frequencies. So for example, if you are currently in a scarcity situation, go hang out with the richest friend that you know. Just for a day, go grab coffee with them and notice how their vibe is different, how they think about money. Or if you're lacking in relationships, go and meet very social, gregarious, charismatic people. It's going to feel uncomfortable because their frequency is so different from yours. But if you can stick it out and hang out with them, you will notice where the gap is, and you'll notice, oh, my frequency is not default. It can be changed. It can be molded. And one of the best ways to mold it is to hang out with other people that embody the frequency that you want. I call them expanders. I picked this up from To Be Magnetic. It's a program online. But basically, the idea of expanders is someone who is living a life that you want to live, and they're already fully embodying it. So let's say I wanted to become more fit. The best thing I could do is go hang out with other fit people, because even energetically, without exchanging words, I'm going to pick up things from their movement, the way they eat, the way they walk, the way they talk. I'm going to understand their codes. So to go back to your question, which was, how do we change our frequency? Expanders, number one, like find people that are living different lives than that you would like to embody, different qualities, different personalities. Get mentors. Mentorship for me, coaching and mentorship has been absolutely one of the best investments in my life. When you have someone in your corner rooting for you, pointing out your blind spots, pointing out your limiting beliefs, you grow so much faster. And the final thing I would say is, as Neville would say, it's the feeling. So 20 minutes a day, preferably before bed, find a quiet moment, close your eyes, and in your imagination, imagine you are already the person you would like to be. So not James right now, but James 2.0, who has the frequency that I want. A great technique is to imagine that there are infinite parallel universes and that they're all happening now. And so in some parallel reality, there actually does exist a version of you that is extremely wealthy. There does exist a version of you that is extremely free and happy. There does exist a version of you that is extremely fulfilled in their romantic and relationships and friendship and social life. And so for a moment, close your eyes and allow your mind to drift to that version and ask yourself, how do they feel? How does James in that reality feel? And you start receiving really interesting codes. And if you can keep it up and do 20 minutes every day, plus sprinkle that vibe throughout your day, things start changing really fast. And then you add the 369 affirmations method. You'll start listening to Neville Goddard. You start filling your mind with good ideas and good books. Your life starts to change very quickly.
Nice. You know what I noticed about frequency, or when I started to realize about frequency, was when I had kids. So I'm like in the youngest of my friends, and there was a whole bunch of people that were having kids, and there was a whole bunch of people that were still single. And I noticed that when I had kids, our frequency to the people who had kids was more aligned to the people who didn't have kids, because it's just that vibe of like, we have a connection that's different to people that live that single life. And that was a really wake up call, because you start to you start to dissect your friends in some sense. You start to go down the frequency of people that are in the same mindset as you rather than the mindset of others. And that's a hard thing for people.
It is hard.
It's,
It is hard because I think there's a mistaken sense of loyalty that we pick up in elementary school and high school where
Mhm.
you don't really get to choose your friends when you're put into school. You're just in a classroom of people. But
Yeah,
when you're an adult, you do get to choose your tribe. And people sometimes forget that the people they grew up with, while they are probably kind, amazing people, are they really on your vibe? Are they really
yeah,
heading in the same direction? Do they really understand your goals and where you're
yes,
heading? And so I find that the smartest people get around other people that are heading in the same direction, and then they grow much, much faster.
yes,
Because if the five closest people to you are in the same industry or the same business or uh, the same frequency, right? Let's say you want to change your wealth frequency in 2025, but your four closest friends are still kind of stuck in scarcity thinking. That's going to hold you way back. So
hmm
there are some tough decisions to be made where you may have to distance yourself from some people that you love, but you might have to distance yourself a little bit and inject more people into your life that match the frequency of who you want to become. And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but it is a necessary step.
yeah,
We most become like the people we hang around with. We just can't help it. And so no matter how good your intentions are, if you keep hanging out with the old crowd, the same old
yeah,
crowd, you're going to stay the same person.
yeah. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Absolutely. I've just noticed in my social friends, the people that have stuck together, they have not changed.
Hmm.
They're probably going to cancel me from listening to this in the podcast, but it's the truth. I've noticed that the people that have stuck in that same circle have not grown. And that's just my view. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. But
Or
yeah, I've
or they've
noticed that.
grown in different ways,
Grown in
right?
different ways. Yes. Yes. They've grown in
So
different ways. Yeah.
everyone's growing, but they're growing at slightly different speeds and slightly different or very different ways, depending on what their mindset is and where they're going.
Yeah.
So I never take it personally, and I hope others don't take it personally. It's just you must align yourself with people that are on the same journey. That's part of the fun of life is going together with people towards a destination, building a company together, or building a business together, or building a relationship together. And you can't do that if the visions don't align.
Yeah. Absolutely. James, I want to circle back on the initial reason I brought you onto the podcast and this whole aspect of, people that are going to be laid off. Uh, and I want to circle it back to a podcast you done during Christmas. It really resonated with me. It's given me my forward push this year. I love it. I'm going to put it up on the show when we post up this podcast. And it's that fact of moving from chapter 1 to chapter 2.
Hmm.
Now people are going to lose their jobs. Okay. And that was the whole point of this podcast. Now, how can we tell people that are listening to this podcast that is the, the, the spark that is going to move you from chapter 1 to chapter 2? What advice would you give to people listening out there? And I'll give you 2 cents. A lot of people are going to be scared. They're going to be very, very scared. Things are just at the moment, it's not steady. It's so, how should you say, unreliable. What's happening in the market, what's happening in the industry. What advice would you give to everyone?
Well, the first advice is it's going to be hard to follow, but don't be scared because the fear doesn't help at all and the stress doesn't help at all. You can actually experience something uncomfortable and not get as stressed out or as panicked as you could be. Um, but I know that's very hard to follow in the moment. So, just to give a context for people about chapter 1 versus chapter 2, the idea behind that concept was there is think of like a book like Harry Potter, right? And the first chapter, he's at the Dursleys, he's living his muggle life. And at one point, Hagrid comes and he says, "You're a wizard." And he crosses this threshold from Muggle world to Wizard world. I think they go to Diagon Alley, they pick up the wand, and it's this whole new world. Now, imagine if the moment Hagrid comes and says, "You're a wizard, come with me." Imagine if Harry says, "Yes, but wait, I need to finish my homework from the Muggle school, and I also got to finish my chores for the Dursleys, and I got to also do this and this and this." He can't do that. He has to drop his old life. He has to die to his old self completely, leave behind all the open loops, and step into the new reality. And when someone is going through a major transition in life, this is what must happen as well. Sometimes people get in this illusion of, if I just have a little bit more time, I can tie up every last open loop and loose end of my old reality and then gracefully transition into the new one. But very often it takes a leap of courage, and you don't have the luxury of tying up every loose end. You actually have to just drop the old reality, say goodbye to it, metaphorically die to your old self, and step into the fire, step into the cave that you fear to enter, and go into your new reality. So in terms of layoffs, a layoff can be the biggest blessing because that decision has been made for you. Yeah. And now your choice is to surrender to it and work with the universe, or resist it. Now your choice. Okay, just a sec. There's like a cat meowing outside my door. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it, but it's totally fine.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, take it from the top. About either surrendering or going resisting it.
So when people get laid off, there can be a massive opportunity for growth there. Rather than falling into despair, you can say, "Great, this part of my life has ended. Maybe I had no control over it, or it felt like I had no control over it. It's done. I'm saying goodbye to it. And now I have the opportunity for something even greater and better." And that's something people can pray for and call into their reality. This is a great mantra for anyone. This situation will only benefit me. This situation that I'm going through is for my highest good. I may not see it right now. I may not see how it is, but over time, this situation will benefit me, and it will only be an advantage to me. And I mean, I can think of so many ways that someone getting laid off could lead them to an amazing opportunity that they might never have pursued. It might lead them to start their own business. It might lead them to have a midlife crisis, which could then lead to a spiritual awakening, which could then lead to a whole set of transformations. So yes, in the moment, it's scary. In the moment, it's painful. But trust in the universe, trust in yourself. That's one of the other things is, you know that up until this point, you have conquered every challenge that was thrown your way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. So trust that whatever challenges come up in 2025, you will equally conquer them, because you have proof. You've done it your whole life. You're here. You made it. You might have a little scratch here and there, a few dings, but you made it. I made it. And we will continue making it. And nothing can beat you down if you just see it as a training ground. This is a training ground for your soul. And every difficult event is there to teach you something. It's there to build resiliency. It's there to give you strength. It's there to give you faith. And when you fully buy into that, it starts working out that way for you.
What an amazing answer. It feels like I'm just listening to one of your podcasts right now. And, you gave such a great example. And James gave an example from that chapter 1 to chapter 2 podcast. He loves Harry Potter, as you can tell. But I would seriously urge you to listen to that episode. It really resonated with me over Christmas. And as you just mentioned, James, I think you just mentioned such a beautiful sentence. The decision has been done for you to then start something great. it's harder coming from a decision where it's like, I have a choice. Shall I make this risk to leave my job and go and do something? Or, shall I do it now? Or, shall I wait until I have a bit more money and this? But that is such a beautiful sentence you just said. The decisions has been done for you and has basically given you the catapult to then start something.
Exactly.
So that is such an amazing, amazing answer. I can speak to you all day. It literally, as I mentioned, I am starstruck because James is on the show, and you could just tell by him just being on the show for like, an hour now. He has so much wealth of knowledge that in this field, if you really, really want to get into this field and learn more about it, he is the perfect person to listen to. James, I wanted everyone to know a bit more about Unlock God Mode because it's such a great course, and would love the listeners to know what they get from it. What did they get out of it? What do you give to it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoyed the concepts that you and me discussed in this podcast, Unlock God Mode is a continuation of that. It's the ability to dive even deeper into these concepts. The idea behind Unlock God Mode was, how can I bring the most practical, grounded knowledge about manifestation so that if anyone goes through the whole course, they can't help but benefit from it? And so I designed it in a 30-day format where every day you get a lesson about manifestation, about reality, about how to see the world differently. And you also get a feeling state. I call it a vibe amplifier. And that's your opportunity to practice a specific frequency. So we have the frequency of success, the frequency of gratitude, the frequency of confidence, the frequency of love. And every day it's a different one that you can tap into. And the idea is that you go on this journey with me, and it doesn't involve any psychedelics, but it'll feel like you're tripping. It'll feel like your reality is morphing and molding around you. And you will gain at least 30, if not more, but there's 30 days. So 30 different tools, 30 different frameworks that will help you manifest in a grounded, practical way the reality that you're seeking. And so if anyone's curious about it, they can visit unlockgodmode.org, or they can see more details on my podcast, The James Xander Trip.
And we're going to put all the links that you just mentioned on the podcast, on the show notes. And I really hope that anyone that's listening to this podcast or listen to this episode have really taken in what we have discussed together. Because I hope it's resonated with everyone who could be going through a bad experience. And as mentioned, James is there. He has that wealth of knowledge. And listen to his shows before before joining his course. I personally believe that's how I've came across him. You listen to the podcast that he pushes out, his YouTube videos, and then you will see the type of knowledge that he is trying to portray out there. So, James, I really can't thank you enough. Really can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It means a lot to me. So deeply personal as well. And would love to have you back on again at the next year to see how 2025 turned out for you. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I loved this conversation. I loved how natural it was, how flowing it was. Your questions were so great, and it's been a true pleasure to be on this podcast. So thank you.
Brilliant. And I'm going to keep that cat bit in as well. So